More than 250 Israelis died in a surprise large-scale attack by the Palestinian militant group Hamas on Saturday. Prime Minister Netanyahu has now vowed to reduce the Hamas group's Gaza hideouts to rubble. The escalation follows months of rising violence, mostly in the West Bank, and tensions around Gaza's border and also at contested holy sites in Jerusalem. Gaza officials said that the intense airstrikes on the coastal enclave brought the Palestinian death toll to at least 232, with nearly 1,700 injured, following Hamas group's massive rocket barrage and ground, air and sea offensive on Saturday. The gun battles raged into the night between Israeli forces and hundreds of Hamas fighters in at least 22 Israeli locations, including at least 2 where gunmen were holding hostages. More than 1,000 people in Israel were wounded by gunshots, or more than 3,000 incoming rockets as well. Hamas launched its multi-pronged attack at dawn, half a century after the outbreak of the 1973 Arab-Israel war. The Israeli Prime Minister said, Benjamin Netanyahu said, and I'm quoting him here, "I'm telling the people of Gaza, get out of there now, because we are about to act everywhere with all our force." Netanyahu added, "We'll strike them to the bitter end and avenge with force this black day they brought on Israel and its people." Now, as the UN Security Council called an emergency meeting, US President Joe Biden, in an impromptu speech, voiced rock-solid and unwavering support for the US ally. Biden warned against any other party hostile to Israel seeking advantage in this very situation. Not only him, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken also spoke to Egypt, a key intermediary between Israel and Hamas, about the urgency in achieving an immediate halt to the fighting. And as night fell, the Israeli army said its forces were still engaged in live gun battles in a string of Israel locations in an operation labeled Swords of Iron. The Israeli army launched airstrikes into Gaza later in the night, while militants fired rockets. Hamas earlier released images of several Israelis taken captive, as you can see on your screens right now. An army spokesperson confirmed that the soldiers and civilians had been kidnapped. The Islamist group started the multi-pronged attack around 3:30 GMT with thousands of rockets aimed as far as Tel Aviv and Jerusalem. Some rockets bypassed the Iron Dome defense system and hitting buildings as well. The Hamas fighters traveling in ground vehicles, motorized paragliders and boats breached Gaza's security barrier and attacked nearby Israeli towns and military posts. They opened fire on the residents and passerbys. The bodies were strewn on the streets of the Israeli town of Sderot near Gaza, and inside cars, the windscreens shattered by hail of bullets. Palestinian armed men were seen gathering around a burning Israeli tank. Others drove a seized Israeli military Humvee vehicle back into Gaza, where they were met by cheering crowds. Israeli Army Major General Ghazan Alayan warned Hamas had opened the gates of hell. Israel's military said that it had warned residents to evacuate before targeting the multi-story buildings used by Hamas. While Israel's state-run electricity company cut the power supply to Gaza as army flares lit up the night sky. Hamas labeled its attack as Operation Al-Aqsa Flood and called on the resistance fighters in the West Bank as well as in Arab and Islamic nations to join the battle. Hamas chief said that the group was on the verge of a great victory. Air raid sirens wailed across southern and central Israel as well as in Jerusalem. In Tel Aviv, a gaping hole was ripped into a building with residents boarding a bus to flee to safety. The conflict sparked major disruption at the Tel Aviv airport as well, where many airlines cancelled their flights. In northern Gaza on Saturday, hundreds of people fled their homes carrying food and blankets. Violence also erupted across the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, with 5 Palestinians killed and 120 wounded in clashes with the Israeli forces and the settlers. Western capitals condemned the wave of attack by Hamas, which Israel, the United States of America and European Union considered a terror group. The European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen called the attack terrorism in its most despicable form. But Hamas drew support from other foes of Israel. Iran's supreme leader declared that he was proud. And Lebanese militant group Hezbollah praised Hamas, dubbing the attack a heroic operation. The UN Middle East peace envoy Tor Wennesland warned of a dangerous situation and called on all sides to pull back from the brink. Now, all homes in Israel are required by law to have bomb shelters. Many who are in hiding in Israel say that they can hear gunfire while others cannot find their loved ones. The situation is heartbreaking and devastating, to say the least. For a more comprehensive understanding on this, our correspondent Jody Cohen sends us this report from a bomb shelter, giving us a sense of living under fire in Israel when the bomb shelter becomes your home. Take a look.
The siren has gone off. I don't know if you can hear in the background what's going on. I'm going into the shelter now, and I expect that it won't just be Renana going into the shelter. Now, can somebody just shut the door? Sorry, I'm just absolutely shaking now. We're now in the shelter with my family, and guys, weren't expecting this. This is the, we've had, people are in and out of the shelters all day across Israel. I've spoken to people today who have literally spent the whole day in the bomb shelter, spoken to people in Sderot, which is a community bordering Gaza, where they've had non-stop rockets all day, but also dealing with the Hamas infiltrators literally on the streets outside their apartment building. Just heard a thud here that could be of a rocket firing, or that could be of a missile dome intercepting. But yeah, one of the people I spoke to in Sderot is working for the ambulance service, and he said that he spent the entire day going around dealing with people who were injured, but also now collecting bodies from the streets. So it's a very, very serious situation here across Israel. It's a state of emergency.
We were earlier joined by Lieutenant Colonel Daniel L. Davis, who is a military expert and senior fellow for defense priorities. And this is what he had to say about the escalating Israel-Gaza war that is being condemned globally. Take a listen.
It'll be hampered by quite a number of things, not the least of which is the large number of Israeli civilians which have been captured and are now being held in all kinds of areas, apparently throughout the Gaza Strip, and that's going to definitely hamper, especially any large-scale air attacks. I think it's going to make that very difficult for Israeli defense forces. But also we have to understand that this has been planned for quite a long time, meticulous planning and very good execution, and how it's especially in their surprise that they launch. And that also implies that they have a good plan for an Israeli incursion. So anytime you fight in a built-up area and in cities, you're going to have problems with civilians, but there's also going to be probably ambushes and all kinds of booby traps. So this is going to be a very, very difficult situation for the Israeli Defense Forces if they have to go into the Gaza Strip. May have been incidental to it, because anytime you have an operation of this complexity where it was literally air, land, and sea. And in 20 different locations out there, these things have to have been planned and rehearsed for many, many months, possibly even years. So I don't think that anything that's happened in the near term had any impact on the operation itself, but may have just been a convenient issue on the day of launch.
And these are live visuals on your screen right now. They are from Gaza. As dawn breaks, the militants in Gaza fired fresh rockets into Israel, while the Israeli military continued to strike targets in the Palestinian enclave, setting off explosions there. These are live visuals on your screens. We can see the smoke billowing from the buildings there at the Gaza Strip. We are continuing to keep an eye on the latest developments as the war between Israel and the Hamas militant group escalates.